Hi, and welcome to Rabbit and Moon Tarot. My name is Angel, and I will be doing a collective read today on May 1st, Friday, and it's a full moon in Scorpio. So, the last couple of readings that I've done have been, it feels to have to do a lot with how the collective is searching for the truth or clarity. And because Scorpio tends to be a little bit of a detective, but more specifically, very intuitive. I want to lean into more oracles today to let the message come through naturally. Now, also because it's Scorpionic energy, it is a little bit about, okay, so what is it in this, full moon in Scorpio? Yes, Scorpio energy is very good at being intuitive and seeking out and needling out the truth, but also at the same time, it can shed light on parts of us that, what parts of us are we still holding on to that we don't need to hold on to anymore? Like, collective, 100%, I feel like you've done a lot of healing, but there are some stories that you're still telling yourself because you're used to telling them to yourself, and you don't realize how healed you actually are. And healthy boundaries are good to have, and you've upheld those boundaries, but there is still some sort of behavior cycles that are still kind of showcasing in your relationships, as well as some things internally that you're still kind of working through. So this is what we're going to be talking about today in this reading is what are some cycles that maybe still occurring in your external world, whether they are in friendship, family, professional, or love, and also what things internally are we still wrestling with as a collective? My luminaries, we're not perfect. We are human and we are always growing, changing, progressing. We're not static. We're not perfect. And so there are some points that we need a little bit more polish. So let's see. What energy around us is as much healing as we've done. It's an ongoing process. It's kind of like I said before, like being an athlete. You can reach peak physical condition, but once you reach that peak physical condition, you've got to maintain it. You got to keep at it in order to keep the physical peak of fitness. So what are maybe some patterns or cycles, or maybe even people we're still kind of allowing into our life that we know maybe we should handle, maybe we should pay a little more attention to? And the Scorpio full moon is saying, hey, let's look back and be like, okay, we're kind of done with this. We've healed. We're actually more healed than we believe ourselves to be, and we're stronger than we believe ourselves to be. So what is it in the external that needs to be asked to leave? So let's see. So we have entanglements, third party, outsider, messy, busybody, web of lies. Now, this is something that I feel like in the collectives that I've read for currently and in the past, this third party energy seems to be something that does come forward a lot. And that's not to say that it always is someone. There's always someone involving themselves in your personal business, your professional business, or your family or friendship business. It can be things. It could be cycles that often kind of drag us down. So example, yes, if it's a romantic relationship, there's always some external, in this regard, there would be someone external that would be putting pressure and stress on that relationship. It could be a nosy parent, an overly opinionated sibling, a best friend of jealousy, or a past lover for either yourself or your partner. So part of the cycles that this full moon in Scorpio is kind of highlighting is we've healed, we've progressed. We're not perfect, but what are some cycles that are still kind of popping up in our lives in the external that we need to be like, we're done with? Is recognizing when third party energy, whether it be people or behaviors, and when I mean behaviors is like workaholic, maybe substance abuse, maybe overspending. What things are we allowing to stay in our energetic field that press upon us, that create stress within our relationships? Again, whether they be platonic, familial, romantic, or professional. Okay, let's see what else. Also, I want to apologize for the fact that my camera is being very strange and is doing this kind of like slowed down motion. I am using a recorder to record audio just in case it gets really bad and it actually affects the audio that's being recorded with this video. Just as a point of recognizing that I can see it slowing down. And also, that moment that I've taken for clarification, I feel like you all have been going through that a lot. Like, oh boy, maybe one of the cycles that needs to break is your habit of over-explaining. Like, if you say your truth, if you say your thoughts, if you say your opinion, there's no need to continue to support it or to make excuses for it or to give more and more data for it to support the fact that you feel that way. If you feel that way, if this is your truth, if this is your opinion, is this your belief, then that's what it is. Maybe the cycle of over-explaining also needs to end. All right, so moving forward. Okay, so then we have faith, letting go, trusting in God, whatever happens, happens. Okay, so one of the other things that you may have an issue with, these are things that I'm telling you right now that you would already be knowing, because this is things that you have been healing from and you recognize, but they might still be sometimes you hit like what I call like a sticky wicket. Like you get to a place where you can showcase the skills of how you've healed and learned and grown and transmuted and turned those experiences into strength. But there's always going to be those moments that kind of pull you back, and you recognize those moments of like, I've been working on healing, but this, I'm sorry to swear, but this shit really got me, and I kind of took a step back. So entanglements in that third party is one of them, but the other one is just believing in yourself and believing in your intuition, believing that you're on the path and you are doing exactly what you're supposed to do. There is a cycle of disbelief that you're doing the right thing for yourself. Maybe you second guess all the time. Did I make the right decision? What if I would have made something different? Am I on the right path? Is this the path to healing? Is this the path to my success? Is this the path to abundance? Is this the path to understanding? Have I done the right thing? Did I not pray enough or manifest enough or meditate enough? There is doubt. There is a cycle of doubt in the external. So maybe you feel people don't believe in you. Maybe it's not just internal, but maybe it's external. Maybe you feel like people don't believe you or don't have faith in you to do the right thing. The thing about people outside of us, they have their own reality. They're going through their own thing. Well, we can take what they say and what they do and consider it. They're not the person writing your story. You are. Everyone can have an opinion, but only you know who you are. Only you know what your intentions are. Only you know what's right for you. So don't let people's lack of faith in you or what you believe in or how you're moving or decisions you make jeopardize your faith in yourself. Okay? We're going to do one more card. See what what's still in your life and around you that could need some looking into, some polish. Then we've got unconditional love, love without limits. Boy, oh boy, I heard it's hard for me to be vulnerable. And do they really love me for me? So let's just go over the things that I feel like, I'm going to put this off to the side here. Let's just go over the things that this Scorpio new moon seems to be highlighting as what do we still need to address that we've been kind of carrying with us for a little too long. Well, we've done healing, and healing is a journey. It's not a destination. It is continual. It's like I said, like being an athlete and being in peak physical condition. You maintain it. It's a journey. You're continually growing, evolving. And doing that is recognizing, okay, here's where I've grown, and here's where there's moments where I've kind of taken a step back or backslid, but It is a journey. You keep moving forward. So in the external, it feels like letting third-party energy affect and put pressure on your life, your relationships, and your decisions, whether or not those third parties are a nosy parent, an over-opinionated sibling, or a previous lover. Having faith. Maybe you allow people's opinion of you to formulate your opinion of yourself, and thus you lose faith in yourself. People's opinion of whether you can or can't do something, in maybe some unconscious way, weighs on your belief in self and whether or not you can or can't do something. But not allowing not allowing other people's to shape your opinion is what we should be striving for. Everyone's going to have an opinion. Everyone's going to have something to say. But only you can write your story. And we have to do our best to believe in ourselves, that we're doing the best for us. And the last one is unconditional love. Maybe you feel like being your most authentic self. You feel like people won't love you for who you are. Maybe you feel like unconditional love is not something that you see in the outer world. Maybe you feel like, it's conditional because you have to be a certain height or a certain weight or have a certain job or have a certain goal or have a certain friend group or say the right thing and be completely a secure and stable person, when we all live in the real world. And so we all have our past hang-ups and experiences, some traumas. Like, nobody is perfect. And there is maybe this external belief, maybe it's been reflected in past relationships where people have said things like, well, and this is becoming a little vulnerable for me because it has been said to me is, you're pretty, but if you were thinner, if you were taller, things like that. And that's a vulnerable point for me. It's like, I can imagine it being a vulnerable point for other people. So having said all of that, let's look into, I'm going to use these new Oracle cards that I received. They're a little bit funny, but sometimes you have to have a little bit of levity when you're doing some self-reflection. So this is internal things. What are some internal things that Scorpio full moon is asking us to leave behind, and or to be like, hey, let's put this big spotlight on these things that need to be addressed. Okay. So the first one is overstimulated in public, noise, panic, sensory bombardment. So, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm being taken to the library because I'm very noise sensitive. If there's too much going on, boy, oh boy, do I get overwhelmed. It's going to, like, say, the grocery store, and there's music playing, and there's clanging of carts, and there's lots of, conversations. People are laughing, registers are going, clanging of carts. There's honking outside, there's a siren, and then all it takes is, like, crying kids to make me feel like, oh my gosh, sensory overload. I have to leave. I have to, get myself to my quiet space, light a candle, and meditate. It's not my proudest moment, but that's an example of being overstimulated in public. Sometimes it's sensory, like smells, maybe walking through the perfume aisle in a department store, or sound sensitive, like I just explained, or maybe visual noise, like there's too many lights, there's too many cars, there's too many billboards. There is something about us internally collective that we are overstimulated, and this is big. This is a big thing for me to say. Yes, we may have tactile overstimulation, but usually that overstimulation that we receive via auditory, visual, or smell has to do with something deeper that maybe we have to address. Maybe we have underlying anxiety. Maybe we have a fear of being alone. Maybe we have a fear of losing control. Whatever it is, you would know. So I'll just leave it as maybe there's an underlying anxiety. What the anxiety is about, well, I'll leave that to you to figure out if it resonates. Oh, we have two more, which is perfect. Then we have calling it a phase, minimalization, escapism, and self-deception. So it says it's just a phase, but you know what this reminds me of? That cartoon where the dog is sitting in a kitchen having a cup of coffee and there's a fire behind him and there's a sign that says, "This is fine. This is taking on too much." Taking on too much and then not respecting or understanding or hearing our bodies and our emotional selves and our spiritual selves that say, "Hey, I need a break." And I just said, when we're overstimulated via auditory, sensory like smell or visual, it usually stems from something deeper underlying, and it manifests in like overstimulation through sensory things. If you're taking on too much, work, taking on extra shifts or taking on responsibilities at home, watching the kids or doing things for family, or you're doing the emotional lifting in your relationship and you're always the one who has to reach out that olive branch to a friend that you might have had a misunderstanding to, and you're always the person who takes on. Is it surprising that when you go to someplace simple like a grocery store, all the noise are just like, I gotta go home and meditate? Or you walk into a department store, oh, too much smells, I gotta get out of here. Or there's too much visual noise, it's making me nervous. It is a physical response to the amount of things that we have allowed into our lives. Again, we are the maestros of our own destiny. We write the reality. So what we have to do in order to take care of our lives is to take care of ourselves and to recognize, hey, you don't always have to take it on. You don't always have to say, oh, I'm just busy right now. It really isn't that way. When you're sitting in the middle of like an emotional or mental fire, you feel overwhelmed. The next card is scrolling instead of healing, numbness and mindless distraction. These three cards right here make me feel like this is the main one, and here are the ones that's like, I don't want to say support it because that doesn't sound right, but the ones that are like a byproduct of this. When you take in too much, when you take too many shifts at work, when you're the only one watching the kids or doing all the errands for the family, or doing the emotional lifting in the relationship, or always have to be the peacemaker in your friend group, that weight, that responsibility manifests in body. Sometimes you might even have body aches. And instead of addressing it, instead of letting that truth come to the surface, maybe you just scroll on Facebook for a little bit or on Instagram, watch funny reels on YouTube, and then go to bed. Now, earlier this week, I was talking about how there's a need for a truth to come forward. And sometimes that truth is from an external place, like maybe friend, family, partner, or job that's withholding information that's important to how you move through your life, important decisions about how you are going to decide the trajectory of your life. And that can still hold true. But in this reading right here, this has to do more with the truth that we are hiding from ourselves. The things that we allow bog us down. The things that we don't address overwhelm us. And so now that we've got those oracle cards pointing out external and internal, Scorpio full moon is saying, let's look at that, let's address that, and let's end that kind of chapter, that kind of behavior. Let's needle out and find why we do that, why we allow these situations, and what we can do going forward to make our lives feel more at peace, more balanced, and healthier. So now I think I will grab some tarot. So what is this full moon in Scorpio asking us to do? What is this full moon in Scorpio asking us to do now? Six of Swords. This is to move on from this old way of being. This is moving towards a better place, more in alignment. It's also about internal growth. Sword energy is about intellect and logic and communication and understanding. This Six of Swords is understanding when it's time to move forward. full moons, completing cycles, getting ready to move forward. Oops, we've got 2. So we've got the 4 of Cups. 4 of Cups energy is, when it's in romance, it's about being focused and not letting things distract from your object of your affection. It also can mean being uninterested in romantic connections. But more importantly, when it comes to a general reading, it's about meditation and not being moved or swayed by external noise, by external occurrences. Grounding yourself, meditating, grounding yourself in your path, knowing where you want to go. Spirit is saying it's time to move forward from these old chapters. This is something really big. And it's something you already know. It's maybe something that you're like, I'll save this for a rainy day. But honey, baby, it's a storm now outside. You got to deal with it now. This full moon in Scorpio is asking it's time to move forward. Do not distract yourself from the path that you know you want to walk, to the version of yourself that you know yourself to be, one that's less inhibited by the external factors and internal blockages. It's asking you to step into who you know yourself to be and who you want to be, and you know the path that you need to take. Oh, and we have the Empress on top. Empress, that is intuition, warmth, the first monarch or ruler of the tarot. So this represents warmth and discipline. It is the iron fist in the velvet glove. It is being kind and understanding and full of love and beauty, but also with very defined boundaries and recognizing when to cut away the fat and to only allow in things that are in alignment. And that also means doing that with yourself. There are patterns that you know. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. This is what it really feels like. I'm getting the inclination that the collective that I'm talking to is just like, ugh, why is this reading me to filth right now? Yes, I know I do this. Yes, I know I take on too much. Yes, I realize vulnerability is a point of contention for me. Yes, I have a hard time believing in myself or that others would love me as much, or that third-party energy does tend to kind of make it a little crowded when I'm trying to build something for myself. Yes, these are things that I know I do. So this full moon is asking us, well, let's move on from that. Stay grounded, meditate, focus on your path, because you can embody that beautiful balance of boundaries and beauty. I thought a card was going to come out, they didn't. What else is the full moon asking of us? The Ace of Cups. When we do this, when we allow ourselves, when we truly, let me repeat that. When we, and I didn't realize that I had a card flipped over. We're going to give it the respect, but we're going to also talk about this. When we allow ourselves the time, the space, the courtesy, and the love to get out of our own way sometimes, the amount of possibilities that open up to us when we remove that first block, that first roadblock. And oftentimes, that first roadblock is ourselves. I'm not saying this from a vantage point of very high. I'm saying this from ground zero. I am still working on that. And the fact that this is coming through is touching a nerve with me, which means it's going to touch a nerve with someone out there. Because it's a real lived experience. To have that moment of realization that we have an idea of what we want, and we're frustrated that we haven't got there yet. But the thing that we fail to realize is we are our own first block. And once we remove that block and allow ourselves to move forward, stay grounded and meditate and continue on the path, define boundaries and keep that warmth and beauty, we create opportunities for ourselves. The universe is like, oh, thank goodness. Whew, they took down that first fence. Now I can start bringing in opportunities. That's what it's about. Five of Swords is about self-sabotage. I mean, look at this fella. This makes me think, anybody who's a video game person, this makes me think of a Souls game. The amount of times in a Souls game, and I'll explain for those who are not video game folks, the amount of times in a Souls game that you have to try and then try and then try and then try to get past a certain smoky doorway. But eventually we do it. It's about tenacity. It's about continuing forward. It's about having faith in self. Knowing you can do it. Understanding that it's hard. But knowing you can do it. And for those who are not video game folks, it's just it's like a fighting game. And every time you walk through a smoky doorway, there is a big boss that you have to defeat. But that big boss is just our first obstacle, which often is us. Okay, so now that we have what the full moon wants us to see or understand, what's the advice? What advice does this full moon want to give us? And I apologize, I think this is getting a little bit long, but such is the way when I'm doing like a linear reading. So what's the advice that this moon wants to give us going forward now? Oop, we have a card wanting to pop out, so we'll honor it. King of Cups. We went from the Ace of Cups, creating possibilities for ourselves, opportunities by doing this work. King of Cups, this is the advice. If we do this, if we do the work, if we recognize that sometimes we have to get out of our own way, and as hard as it is to hear that, be diplomatic. Be diplomatic with yourself. Don't just be like, oh, I'm a hot mess and I have all these things that I need to take care of. It's also be like, look at where you've grown. Look at the strength that you have. Look at the lessons that you've learned. Look at the amount of forward movement that you've already completed. Just because you need continued work or polish or growth or healing doesn't mean you disregard everything that you've done prior. King of Cups is asking you to be diplomatic and be fair and be loving towards yourself. Nope, we have the three that we need. Okay, so let me put this off to the side. Then we have Justice. Because it's the right thing to do. You can't just look at yourself and just, in the mirror and just, be awful to yourself. It is okay. I'll use myself as an example. Angel, you've overcome a lot of BS. You've cut off some cycles. You've cut away unhelpful or cruel people. But you still allow these behaviors. Why? Oh, why are you like this? I recognize that I am not who I was 5 years ago. And I recognize who I was. That I'm no longer the person I was a year ago. But I also recognize that I still have a ways to go. And that's okay. That is a very human experience. It is the right thing to do, to be diplomatic and to also be fair. That is the advice full moon is giving us, as well as the moon. The moon, on the full moon, it may not be clear right now how this is all going to unfold, but this is why we have the Empress card, which is also having to do with intuition. And the moon card is also about intuition and maybe like a little bit of uncertainty, but also about trusting the process. Sometimes a path appears as you walk in, and I realize that sometimes that makes people nervous. But we're not always going to have a mapped out route to where we want to be. Sometimes we have to go on faith. Believe that the lessons and the experience that we've accumulated over the path best prepared us for this moment, and that we trust ourselves to make the right decisions for us. Even if sometimes in that forward movement we take a step back, it's recognizing and being fair and diplomatic and being like, okay, I'm just going to be fair to myself and be diplomatic. Yes, I've made some headway. Maybe I backslid a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you can't keep going forward. If we bring it back to like a health journey, it is like doing super great for 6 days in a row, going to the gym, eating clean, but then you decide to skip the gym one day and then you had a burger. Just because you did that doesn't mean you just undid 6 days of work. It just means that tomorrow, the seventh day, you just get back on the bandwagon. You recognize, okay, I had a moment, but I'm going to continue forward. And if you can't see that path, that's okay. You take it a day at a time. That's the advice. Last advice is King of Wands in reverse, which is interesting. This is internal. This is what I'm hearing. King of Wands is about action. It's about ambition. It's about courage and moving forward in like a very, I don't want to say gregarious way. And I don't want to say showboaty, but the King of Wands always kind of comes off to me as very like charming. Has a lot of quote riz, as they say, right? Has a lot of like a lot of personality, but with it in reverse, this is about you feeling that about yourself, not necessarily showboating and showing it to everyone, but this is about internal. This is this is that moment where you might feel like I'm in the building and I'm feeling myself. I actually feel really good about what I'm doing. Maybe I don't know where I'm going to end up, on this path a year from now, but I'm getting to the point where I'm trusting the process. I'm getting to the point that, yes, I may have a habit of taking on too much, letting third party things press on me, not believing in myself. But those are moments in time. They're not the whole of the journey. I have moments in which I celebrate myself, where I feel strong, where I'm feeling myself. I can feel the growth. I can feel the healing. I can feel the progress. And that is that right there is the full moon reminding you to feel that within yourself, to see that within yourself. Even if you have moments where you stumble, even if you have moments where you backslide a little bit, the point is to recognize it, own it, and then move forward. Keep moving forward. And that's the reading I have for the Scorpio full moon. If you like the way that I read and you enjoy the vibe, or just kind of like how I am as a reader, please consider like, sharing, subscribing. I know this is a very tiny channel. I'm doing my best. I hope this reached somebody. I hope this validated or confirmed however you might be feeling. This is Rabbit and Moon Tarot. My name is Angel, and I will see you at the next reading.